Good afternoon, Banneker Bobcats. We have a special guest for you today. This is Principal Craig Staton of Julius West Middle School. I used to work for Mr. Staton way back when, so it's an honor to have him here. I thought he'd give us a great perspective on being a Black leader, and thank you again, Mr. Staton, for coming.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me.
Would you like to share with the audience what is your current occupation and uh,
Yeah, absolutely. Mr. Dawkins, thank you for having me on your show for this interview. I'm very honored to do this. And a little bit about me. Craig Staton, principal at Julius West Middle School in Rockville, Maryland, home of the Jaguars. I'm again principal. I've been principal at Julius West for this is my eighth year, and my 18th year overall as a school-based administrator, but eighth year as a principal.
wow, that's a good chunk of time. But
Yeah.
they're lucky to have you. What made you decide on this particular career?
Well, I really like when I first started teaching. I loved working with kids. I found that that was something that I could do without um, feeling any kind of pressure or anxiety. It just felt natural to me to teach and educate students, and I just like being around kids. Sometimes I feel like I'm a kid myself. But then later in my career, not much later, maybe about 5 or 6 years, I started working at the Board of Education office in one of the teacher educator divisions. Basically, what that is I would go out and work with teachers on classroom strategies, particularly around technology and in incorporating tech tools into their instruction. And I fell in love with that work. I did it for a few years, but ultimately I wanted to get back into a school. And I've been in a school for the last 18 years. But what I found in coming into administration is that I really like working with both adults and students. And so, as an administrator, it's really given me that ability to work with staff, students, and also families. I love working with the community and I love working with families. So, this job has really given me everything I could ever want in working with people.
Yeah, yeah, being a people person is extremely
Yes.
important. So can you give us a bit of your day to day? Like, what's your day to day operations like as a principal?
Well, it's definitely different in COVID 19 and this pandemic. So I'll give you guys two worlds. One, if we're in person and school's running normal, my day to day is pretty fast paced. From the time I get in very early in the morning, typically around 7 a.m. Um, doing emails, signing checks, reviewing different documents, just to sort of clear my space for the workday before students arrive. And once students arrive, I'm available, accessible. That is outside, welcoming all the students that come in, checking on any issues around transportation, safety, and just being visible in the hallway in the beginning of the school day. And then just my day goes from there. I'm really there for the staff. I often visit classrooms to check on both students, but also to see how teaching and learning is going. It's very important as a principal to really, or an administrator, but especially the principal, to really know and understand what is going on in every classroom. There should be learning, there should be organization, there should be some interactivity between students day to day appropriately. And then the end of my day is still the same thing. We're also running a lot of clubs and activities in the afternoon, and it almost feels like a regular school time. At Julius West, we have a huge extracurricular activities program, but in COVID, it switched a lot to more Zoom. Similar type of day in terms of getting into classrooms, but obviously it's Zoom now. We still have extracurricular activities virtually. A lot more meetings now as during the pandemic, which I don't necessarily like. I don't think a principal, one who rises to the level of being a principal, really wants to be in meetings constantly. We want to be around people. Meetings are important because it helps you plan for your school community. You can address parent needs, student needs. So we all need meetings, but the pandemic has really put more and more meetings on my schedule, which I've done, but it's not necessarily my favorite part of the job.
Yeah, I do recall how visible you were. I remember you actually had a desk set up in the middle of the hall, and you sit there as kids transition. I'd never seen it
Yes,
before, but yeah.
I still do that.
You want to share a bit about your upbringing, like the
Hmm.
lessons you learned growing up?
Hmm. Sure. I grew up in North New Jersey. Geographically, we were situated just outside New York City area, the East Orange, Patterson, New Jersey area. It's an urban setting, um, and I grew up in two-parent household with siblings, and but I had a very strong extended family on both sides, particularly on my dad's side. And I often felt like my family on that side of um, my extended family on that side, my paternal parent side, was really like my second family in a lot of ways. I spent a lot of weekends. They were both business owners, my grandmother and grandfather. So I learned a lot of values, even though I was grew up in a tough area, environment, urban area, um, lots of distractions. And I'm just going to be honest, lots of, things that I saw when I was a kid that I didn't want to be a part of my adult life. A lot of negativity, and but I had a good family that had a lot of there was a lot of positive spirit in the family, and education was always the goal. I naturally loved school for whatever reason. School was something I would say probably from kindergarten or from once grades were being collected. Um, Through eighth grade, ninth grade, I was an honor roll student and always loved school, always wanted to go to college. I did, to be honest, run into a few distractions, detours in high school. Um, a couple of things I'm not necessarily proud of, but it was all part of my learning experience. And what helped me through that, Mr. Dawkins, is my family foundation, having a strong family base, a strong set of values, um, my desire to be educated. I went to college right after high school. I wasn't real focused in that first year or so. I left, started working odd jobs. And then when I went back in my early 20s, I was much more serious and focused and ended up graduating from a very excellent college with honors. But my upbringing wasn't necessarily perfect. I had my pitfalls here and there, but I always go back to that strong family foundation I had and the positive role models, and that's very very important. That it doesn't have to be a family member. It could be another relative. It could be a friend. It could be somebody in the community, but positive role models are so very, very important because those are the people you think about when you are going through your own journey.
So
And
true.
you're reminded through that journey about some of the messages and advice and learnings that came from those people.
That's really true. Very true.
Yeah.
So, what do you feel like is your biggest challenge right now in your profession? Like you're saying, wow, this is a pretty big moment for us, and it's definitely a hurdle. Have you seen anything like that?
Oh yeah, there's a couple of things, Mr. Dawkins. The one is the pandemic. Obviously, has really um, shaken me and I think the profession. And it's what's really bothersome about the current pandemic is how many gaps in learning that are widening, and we really are having a challenge meeting the needs of kids. When we're in person with kids, there's so much more value to that because we see them day to day. We interact with them, we talk to them, we get a feel for what's going on in maybe their personal lives, and we can help. And it's like on the spot support. So the biggest challenge is not having that. That's just been like lifted and removed from our everyday work, and it's become a challenge to try to meet some of those needs. And then the other one issue for me is just our society in general, in terms of where we've been politically, which I'm not going to go too deep into, but also in terms of racially in our society, and at times it feels like we're going backwards um, in our society around tolerance and acceptance and racial diversity and ethnic diversity. And what I fall back on is the challenge of always communicating what is right about diversity, what is the true value in diversity, and accepting others and being tolerant of others. And it's a good challenge, but it feels like a challenge, like a hurdle, because sometimes it feels like our society is going back at times. But those I would think are my two biggest challenges right now are the pandemic, supporting kids and supporting families, and then racial, ethnic, and even gender equality.
Sure. So do you feel like, and of course, I know you've, I thank you for your time. I know you have things to do, but I did want to ask, do you think there's anything we're leaving out here that needs to be addressed? Because again, we're speaking to the Banneker students. I know you have your Julius West family, but also for our Bobcats, our kids who are watching, is there anything you feel like you need to touch on? You really feel they might take and run with?
Yeah, I would convey to the Bobcat family to really trust in your school community, believe in your school community, treat your school community with respect. Because I started a blog. I don't know if you know Mr. Dawkins. I'm going to send you a link to it. It's a monthly blog on school leadership, but there was a article I just wrote for the month of February around community outreach. And one of the pieces, without giving the whole, because I want you to read
Yeah,
it.
definitely.
One of the pieces I wrote about was around a school really being the lifeline of a community,
Mm.
and that it should never close its doors. And so, what I would say to the Bobcats is really embrace your school community, really love your community, and treat it with respect. Don't rely on others or look at others in your school to point to judge them or criticize them. You be the difference in your own school. It starts with each one of us. If I change, or if I'm promoting a particular message that's positive, that rubs off to somebody else. And before you know it, we have an entire school community that is unified and works together as a team.
Yeah, yeah, that's like so ideal right there.
Yeah.
No, thank you so
Hmm.
much. And again, pleasure to
Okay.
you
Yeah.
guys, Staton, and take
Yeah.
care.